Yeah, so the harder ones, I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off here. Through the lens of a Nexus letter, there are three things that kind of I need to check the box of, okay, I'm going with that. And AME is down below in the description if you meet these three criteria. Okay, it doesn't have to be all of them, but it's when the wheels start turning. And that's going to be sleep apnea, secondary to mental health. I'm going to use that as the basis here. People really get mad whenever I talk about this, but I don't care. You're wrong. I'm right. All right, that's rip the Band-Aid off type approach. So the reason why sleep apnea is in the hard category, and I would consider a Nexus, again, there's three things. One is, what's my rating? If I'm 86% and I get sleep apnea connected, that would be 90, 91%. I'm still at 90. Okay. So obviously I'm not going to spend $2,000 or 1,500 or whatever it is on a Nexus letter because there's no outcome change. It's worthless. Okay. That's one. Two, have I been denied? Okay. Have I been denied? I am a fan of using Nexus letters for denials because that's like that's the evidence for the supplemental appeal that gives the veteran power. But if you have the means, submitting a Nexus letter with the initial claim is totally okay. And then third, for sleep apnea specifically, there is a time aspect here because am I willing to pay a Nexus? Am I willing to get a Nexus letter for a claim that's 50%, which is a big ticket item? That's going to move a good 90, it's like an 89 or a 90. That's the difference between 90 and 100%. All of a sudden, that changes everything because the benefits at 100 are so far above 90, and certainly the lower
It's
rate.
unbelievable.
It's
Yeah.
insane. Not just money, take money away. Just the benefits for being P&T are incomparable. Okay, so that's tipping the scale for me. The reason why I use sleep apnea secondary to mental health is because there's evidence that I'm going to call competing evidence, and everyone doesn't like to talk about this, and I don't know why. It's along the same lines of the tinnitus conversation we had, Jason, where the veteran had competing evidence. He wanted migraines secondary to tinnitus. He had documented head trauma that put him in the hospital, a multiple night visit for concussion. That's competing evidence. The competing evidence for sleep apnea is everywhere. There's so much, okay? The most common is actually going to be obesity. So if you are in your 40s, you have PTSD, you want to submit sleep apnea secondary to mental health because that's what YouTube told you to do. So you do it and you're denied and you're also 350 pounds. I can tell you right now, without even looking at your decision letter, you were denied because you're fat. And I'm saying it as direct like that for a reason so everyone can understand what I'm saying. And so, well, what does that mean for evidence? Okay. When you are gathering evidence for claims that are hard, you have to look at both tracks. What is the evidence that's in my favor? What's the evidence that's not in my favor? So if I am overweight, okay, before the VA concedes on this denial, is there a way I can use this evidence not in my favor and rope that back in so it is in my favor? Maybe your PTSD has caused you to have a lack, your testosterone levels are down. You have a lack of will to exercise. Maybe you have a back condition, some knee conditions that prevent or debilitate you from working out. Maybe you have an eating disorder. There's a billion things happening. Maybe your obesity can be service connected. And what I mean by that is an intermediate step. I don't want to go too far into intermediate steps right now. But the point is, there's evidence for, there's evidence against, and we can't ignore evidence against. In fact, if you do ignore evidence against, the VA is just going to cling to that as like an easy denial, and it happens all the time. All the time. Sleep apnea, secondary mental health, I put in the hard category because of just like the lens, for the lower back and radiculopathy, you can see it via MRI, X-ray, opinions, notes, whatever. For sleep apnea, secondary to mental health, you can have 10 exams. 5 of them will say at least as likely as not. 5 of them will say less likely as not. Because the evidence is opinionated. The evidence is correlated at best.
Right.
At best, it's correlated. There's no causative link. I already know someone's going to say, well, I looked at PubMed to see there is a causative link. Yeah, well, there's 100 other studies that say the opposite. Again,
right.
Competing evidence matters. And so that's definitely one. And the last thing I'll say on sleep apnea, it's secondary to mental health, Jason, and then I'm going to turn it to you for another hard secondary, if you will. The more correlating factors you have, because you're not going to prove causation, you're not going to see more likely than not on sleep apnea secondary. Not going to happen. At a minimum, you're going to get, or at most, you're going to get at least as likely. The reason for that is because it's looking at correlating factors, and there are a few, okay? Do you have conditions that correlate to sleep apnea? Anxiety is a huge one, okay? PTSD is a huge one. So while you're sleeping, you might be physically sleeping, but inside your body, you're tight, okay? You might have high blood pressure, whatever that looks like. There's a few other things going on in there. That's going to obstruct your airway, obstructing, sleep apnea. So conditions that correlate, maybe you're on a medication like gabapentin, that's correlated to sleep apnea. Maybe you are overweight. You're going to have to account for that. You can't ignore being fat. Can't do it. You have to account for that evidence because that's competing evidence. Maybe you were exposed for a long period of time inhaling bad pollution, like burn pit. There's a medical term for bad pollution. I forgot what it is. I'm just going to say bad pollution, right? But you're constantly breathing this in. All four of those, you're going to be service connected. If you have one, we're kind of back on the 5-5 now. 5 say yes, 5 say no. And so there's so many things happening with sleep apnea. That is really what's going to tip the scale of, you know what? Maybe I am going to get a Nexus letter for this one. And this matters because right now the planning factor for final proposal date is August of this year. So if you were ever considering sleep apnea secondary, my sincere opinion is use AME, go get a Nexus letter, because if you don't, and this becomes effective, that option is going to be out the window because there's no way you're paying for a secondary at 0%. Like it's not going to happen.
Right.
That's my spiel on sleep apnea. I hope I rustled some feathers out there. If you don't like it, again, I'm right, you're wrong, right?
Right. Nice. And for those that don't know, AME is American Medical Experts. They're board certified doctors, right? This is just a team of doctors that understand the legalese of the VA claims process. So they interweave all the legalese stuff in there for you, so you're not having to explain what you're trying to get done for the VA. If your doctor will do it, great. It probably won't cost you anything, or it'll cost you very little, but you're going to have to bring your doctor up to speed with what's happening. Again, if your doctor can't, won't, doesn't, AME is a definite solution. All right. So